What is up, everyone? We are live on Fantasy and Frames. This is the Daily Fix Show. I am Keith Flemming, the guy that's been on fire lately, Joe. Goodness
That's
gracious.
right, man.
Let's win some more freaking money. I don't want this football season to ever end. Joined as always by my brother in DFS Arms, Joe Ziff, the Brain Matz. Joe's at his parents' house. Kicking it back old school,
right,
bro. I was like, damn, look at Joe, got a whole new background. I thought maybe you did some redecorating or, got a window behind you.
I know.
He's got the beanie on.
Doesn't look like I'm locked in a prison somewhere.
That's exactly what I was about to go with. But, hey, if you're here, welcome. We love to talk DFS. And the great thing about DFS, we're still going. If you notice, all the other fantasy football areas, IDP, Dynasty, all that stuff. Well, I say Dynasty is kind of year-round, but they take a little break. We got a chance to still win money. I actually love this weekend. This weekend and next weekend are two of, in my opinion, your best opportunities to do that because, we don't have a huge slate, but there's enough where you can make some changes. But what we're going to do today, normally, we give our basically value plays 4,500 and below. We're not going to do that. Come on. It's the playoffs. We're going to end up giving you a DFS lineup each, and we are going to actually kind of talk through that. But before we get into it, because I absolutely love it, let's play that banger song, and we'll be back on the other side of this. I love that fucking song. Again, this is the Daily Fix. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to get you ready for Wild Card Weekend. Let's start it here, Joe. How miserable is your life if you're going to the Kansas City or Buffalo game? They're talking about 0 degrees with 50 to 60 mile an hour wind gusts and a foot of snow. I'm a Southern boy. You're a West Coast. There's no way in hell you couldn't pay. Like, I don't even know what the number would be. You'd have to pay me to go sit in something like that. God, it's going to be miserable.
I mean, look at the way I am dressed right now.
Exactly.
I've got a sweater on. I'm wearing my beanie. It's 48 degrees in Tucson. So, and I'm inside. So, yeah. I mean, I did live in Colorado for a couple of years. I've been outside when it's been, 8 degrees or whatever. Not my favorite. And the thing is, too, the cold can be okay. When it's windy and cold, that is the worst. To me, that's the worst weather that exists.
No, you're right.
And,
I'm a big golfer. Same deal, Joe. It's like, when it gets to this time of year, if you see 45, 50, I'm not going to be happy because obviously I'm going to be cold. You see, I mean, again, I've got my hand warmer in my pocket, 50 degrees, and I'm inside. But when that wind blows, it is miserable. I honestly can't fathom 60 mile an hour wind gusts when it's 0 degrees. Like, I mean, is it going to cut through you like a knife? The reason I bring 100%. That up is because it's very important with this slate, right? We've got, 6 games. So 12 teams. You do not want to load up on players that are quarterbacks and pass catchers in games that are going to have 60 mile an hour wind and it's freezing. Before we get into actually building a lineup, let's do it real quick because I think this is a great exercise. Let's rank the games and how many points we think are going to be scored. Is number one Detroit and the Rams, or is it the Cowboys and the Packers? Because you think that's definitely 1A, 1B, right?
100% 1A, 1B. I don't think it's particularly close, but the break between 2 and 3 there. It's interesting because, it's like Dallas is by far the best defense of those 4 because the other 3 are probably the 3 worst defenses that are in the playoffs. But
hold on now. Philadelphia Eagles said,
that's true. No, you're right. Shoot. The Matt Patricia Eagles are the worst. My apologies to these other three defenses I just disparaged. I've been seeing Matt Patricia get floated as a potential Giants defensive coordinator. I'm just like, kill me if that happens. Yeah, so the second, third, and fourth worst defenses, and then Dallas is the best. I still kind of am leaning the Dallas Green Bay game, though. I just think
just because Dallas scores so many points, I gotta get
because
I love it. 38.5 points per game their last 6 home games. It's outrageous.
It's guaranteed to me that they break 30. And I also I believe in Matt LaFleur as an offensive play caller, and I think Jordan Love's played pretty well recently. I'm generally in on that offense. So even though they have a tougher hill to climb there, I like that one a little more just because there's always the chance, maybe Raheem Morris schemes something up and it causes the Lions to struggle. Or, Matthew Stafford's been known to jam a finger and then everything goes bad.
Well, I actually didn't realize that this is a lot of the same coaching staff for the Detroit Lions that gave Sean McVay and the Rams fits in the Super Bowl, where they took away the run, which is something the Lions can do. And
yes, they are pretty good at that.
I would argue that was Jared Goff, and this is Matthew Stafford. And there's a lot of passing statistics that say it's going to be a very difficult task for the Detroit Lions to slow down the Rams. But I think I'm with you that I think I would slightly have the Cowboys-Packers game and then the next two. I think what's crazy is the Bucs-Eagles would be in that conversation. But the QB – A.J. Brown scrubbing his social media. I don't know what the hell's going on there. But seriously, Baker's lower half that's not good, right? When your lower half, and that's what they're saying the injury is. We know that Jalen Hurts has been banged up. So because of that, if I had to pick the next game, I think I would lean Texans-Browns.
I would as well, which again, it feels weird because we're talking about the Cleveland Browns, who are arguably have the best defense in football.
Little bad news, though, that their best corner
is out
this week, and he's out. That definitely changes it a little bit. But even having said that, I completely forgot, Joe, when we talked last night on the show, that was not C.J. Stroud who played in that
game,
Browns-Texans game, and they still scored 22 points.
58. Yeah, 36-22. So, again, just looking at the actual Vegas over-unders, Vegas slightly disagrees with us because they have the Rams game a little bit higher, but it's by 1 point. So, very much.
We also said potato with those two, but
where I don't think you're missing either way with that one. But yeah, I'm with you. The over-under in that game is 44.5. And like you just said, it's like the starting quarterback was out for one of these teams, and they combined for 58. And now, granted, I can't say I watched all of that game, but there's probably some Cleveland getting better field position. In Case Keenum threw 2 picks. So probably some of the 36 from Cleveland is a product of it not being C.J. Stroud.
Yep.
But regardless, if both these teams are in the mid-20s, I think that could very easily be the third highest scoring game, because there's a couple of these games where I don't think we're going to get a lot of points. So, Flacco has obviously multiple 300-yard. First time in his career, he had 3 300-yard games in a row. He's also thrown at least 1 interception in every single game. So that's an opportunity for Houston to get shorter fields against a tough defense.
Yep.
So, I'm with you. I think this is game number 3.
So then obviously we got the Eagles-Bucks kind of by default because, again, of the weather. And then if I had to pick one of the two, I think I would have to go Buffalo-Pittsburgh, because those two teams, I think, more have the ability to just run it. Because whether it's Allen, Cook, playoff Lenny, I think the Bills can do that. And I really think, I've been saying it for a few days, the Steelers, I know they don't have Watt, but boy, this game has kind of fell right into their lap. This was a complete mismatch. But I think if you told me, how could Pittsburgh beat Buffalo? There's a lot of stuff going on right now that goes, this is how. You're not going to be able to probably throw. It's
Right.
going to be, just
Well,
miserable conditions.
the New England
It's not
game.
going to be that lit,
The New England game from 2 years ago, where I think Mac
Right.
Jones
Yep.
threw like 8 passes or something, and they ran the ball 20 some straight times, and it was just so impossible to throw in that game that New England squeaked it out. In part because also, the Bills, for as good as their defenses have been throughout the McDermott era, and then back then Leslie Frazier was the defensive coordinator, you could punch him in the mouth.
Yep.
And so that's exactly what New England did. And yeah, if you're looking at the Steelers and you're like Mason Rudolph's our starting quarterback in horrific weather, you've got to be thinking the same thing. I will say I actually would probably put the Miami-Kansas City game ahead of this one.
How scared do you think Kansas City fans are that this game's going to be close? It's like 14-10 in the fourth quarter, and then Tyreek Hill says, you know what? I am that dude. And he's going to have like a 90-yard touchdown, and it's the difference. Because I would be terrified if I'm a Kansas City fan.
I would obviously be worried about it. I should have tried to look this up beforehand. I don't know if they were having Snead move around with him in the last game. Because obviously Snead's a great corner, although I don't know that there's a single corner in the NFL that can keep up with Tyreek Hill in a straight line. So yeah, I would be worried about it. I think ultimately, probably if I'm a Kansas City fan, I'm thinking this combo of coaches, because it's not just Andy Reid.
You're right. Like Daniels.
But I mean, just like the quality of the coaching staff for Kansas City.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Steve Spagnuolo is now a 3-time defensive coordinator for a Super Bowl champion. Famously was the defensive coordinator that stopped the undefeated Patriots.
Yeah, I knew you were going to get that in there, Joe.
Yeah, of course. Got to live off of it. Everything good for me happened at least 12 years ago. And then, Dave, too, is arguably the best special teams coordinator of all time. Like, he was the special teams coordinator on those Devin Hester's Bears teams.
Yep.
So this is just an awesome coaching staff. You have Pat Mahomes. I think if I'm a Kansas City fan, I'm still just like, wins Tua beat someone good, especially on the road.
Well, the weather thing, too, is, he's 0-10 in games under 40 degrees. Yikes.
I mean, I'm not shocked. I know I read a thing in the last week where it's like if you break down like EPA and all these things by quarter, Tua bottoms out in the fourth quarter because I think McDaniels is a super smart coach and he spams the plays that work early on to just go for it. But if you can keep them, relatively contained, you start figuring out.
They're so good early because all that scripted and
And I think that with the Niners, it's just more unpredictable in part because, they have McCaffrey, they have Debo, they've got Kittle, they have all these guys.
Right, yeah.
And obviously, Miami's loaded too, but I think it's just, you have more of an understanding of what you're going to get. And I think the Ravens game was a great example where, there was some success for Miami, and then it dissipated as you go. And I think Spagnuolo is a smart defensive coordinator. So I think this game is low scoring
as well. Like the offense was proven they were doing well, and then they just couldn't do anything the rest of the game.
And then obviously there's the drops that we're going to worry about in the night game in Kansas City. But for me, ultimately, it comes down why I like this game a tiny bit more than I like that Steelers game is just this game is not going to have any, as far as we know right now, no precipitation. So it's going to be windy. It's going to be cold. But then we're going to go to Buffalo, and it's going to be windy, it's going to be cold, and there's a chance of snow showers.
Snow shower. They're saying a foot of snow is what I'm reading.
They're saying a foot of snow now? Okay, well.
Snow. Holy
smoke. You're playing in a foot of snow. Normally we say, the main thing is wind when it comes to throwing. But, if it's windy and your receivers are – I guess they always said it's the advantage to the offensive player. But I think it's more of an advantage to running backs than it is wide receivers.
Yep.
So, I just think you're limiting so much of the offense in that game. I think that's the game where you could still talk me into maybe Josh Allen, but at 8,000, I couldn't go all the way there. To me, I'm playing running backs in that game, or I'm playing nothing.
Yep, and defenses.
Defenses, absolutely.
I completely agree. All right, so we're going to get into the lineups. Just some recommendations. Make sure that you are doing cash games. I've been saying this all year. Single entries or double ups. And if you're doing single entries, say it's $20, $25, whatever your number is, don't do 5, 6 smaller ones, do the entire amount, go all in on the one lineup, and do a smaller single entry. Usually there's one with like 289 people, 499 people. Get in those because, again, last week I had 186 and 189 and one, right at 4K. And
if I
and if I'd have been in the same exact, because they were $200 single entries, if I'd have been in the exact same contest that was twice the size, it's the biggest one I was in, I would have cashed. I would have made $400 or $500. But again, you just have such a better chance. You don't have to beat so many lineups. Second thing, because you're doing these smaller ones, you're doing cash games. Don't get cute. Like, let other people make mistakes. Don't go, oh, well, everybody's going to have CD Lamb or everybody's going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's fine. If you really think they're going to go off, play them and say, I'm going to beat you with my other 8 players. And then finally, do not forget the significance or the importance of if you really feel strongly about a game. And like me and you, I think both feel pretty strongly about the Cowboys-Packers games, especially like the Cowboys-Packers game where we think it's the Packers going to have a hard time, right? If the Green Bay's down, that's very good for Jordan Love. That's very good for their receivers because then they're in a situation where they're going to have to throw. And on the other side, I didn't have the balls to do it. I wanted to. Like I mentioned Dottle for Dallas. If you think Dallas is going to be up and say they're like really thumping Green Bay, at 4,600, he's not a bad play because he's probably going to get some carries. He got 9 last week when the Washington game got out of hand. So just you can use that stuff to your advantage. Let's do it this way because I want to kind of do them together. Who was the first guy that you were like, yes, this guy's going to be in my lineup? Because I think me and you may agree on this.
Well, I mean, there's the guy who I knew was guaranteed to be in my lineups because of the maneuverability he was giving me. And then there's the guy.
I want the guy that
you're talking about the guys that were like, these guys are going off and scoring a million points.
Yeah, exactly.
So for me, it was the combo of I wanted Amon-Ra and I wanted CD. I wanted both of them. And so obviously that takes up a not insignificant amount of
17K.
My cap.
Yep. So
yeah. So that's. But then obviously guides where the rest of this goes. But I mean, we talked about the home road splits of Dallas where they just become this unstoppable force. I mean, CD Lamb just at home this season, 73 receptions for 955 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Wow.
Now remember, because obviously we have the discrepancy in home road splits between the conferences because of the 17th game. The AFC was the conference that hosted. They played 8 games at home, and he had 953 yards and 73 receptions.
Start. I don't think he had his first big game till like week 3 or 4, so he probably had a home game where he actually didn't go crazy early. I'm with you. I was not able to get Lamb in my lineup because I'll go ahead and tell you, Njoku had to be in my lineup, Cooper Kupp, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I want to real quickly go over St. Brown because we both have him.
Yes, 100%.
We're talking again about home road splits. This guy at home, unbelievable. 22 points per game on DK. What I love, at least 18.2 in all of them. Almost 10 targets per, at least 7 every single home game. Over 7 receptions per, at least 6 every single home game. Over 100 yards receiving, at least 70 every single game. And then he had the 4 touchdowns. And then, oh, by the way, it's a perfect storm. We don't know if Laporte is going to play. They've already ruled out Raymond. We both think the Rams are going to be very difficult to stop and probably are going to be up, meaning they're going to have to throw even more. The only concern I have with St. Brown, and it's not a real concern, is just, I said this last night. I don't know. He had it last week, so it's hard to say he doesn't. But he rarely has like that monster game of 30 plus 40 points. But he's just so consistent. It's like I can almost guarantee for 20. Technically, we need 24 to hit that 3 times number. I feel like in a smaller slate, that's not as big of a deal. It's more about just being kind of around, that number. And again, he scored at least 18 points in every single home game he had. that's his floor. Like, and I actually think 20 points is probably closer.
That feels right
to his floor. I love the Lamb play though. I have plenty of lineups with CeeDee Lamb. I'll go ahead and go through why.
Let me just add one more thing on Amon-Ra there, which is that he averages approximately a yard more per route run against zone than he does man. And the Rams are bottom 5 in man coverage rate. So, again, there's just, like you said, the floor feels like it's 20. Which I think that's for both of those guys. Where, again, like, I think, what was it, since week 8?
And Lamb has the upside is what I love. Like, Lamb can have 50
Lamb.
points.
And again, it's not, even if they blow him out, it's not, there's no chance. What was
the line from Washington last week in a game? They were up like 30 points. He had like 12 receptions for 100.
13 receptions for 98 yards and 2 scores. They won that game 38-10.
It's ridiculous.
Against the Giants in week 10, he caught 11 receptions, 151 and a score. They won that game 49-17. Like, he's had, again, at least 9 targets in every game since week 8, which, coincidentally, that game was against the Rams. He put up 12 for 158 and 2 scores. So, I mean, I think that's what we're hoping for Amon-Ra is, we're getting 10 receptions, 100-some yards, and at least 1 score, and hopefully 2, because, again, you remove Laporta, like, the red zone, where else are you going?
You knew what I was going to say, Brock Wright, but
that's true. There we go. We're hoping.
I am, like I said, I did not go with Lamb, and it's because I know you disagree a little bit, and I totally understand. I know this is a little bit of a risky play. I believe in Cooper Kupp. Like, I think Cooper Kupp is that guy, and I think he's a discount because I think that he had, unlike St. Brown as well, he is somebody who absolutely could have a 30, 40-point game because we've seen him do it not only, in playoffs before, but this season. So he's played 12 games. He had 7+ targets in all of them. Touchdown in 3 of his last 4. I understand the concerns with Puka, and they're very legit, but Puka's biggest games, a majority of them were games that Kupp did not play.
Yeah.
And it's just, for me, they rested him, showing that they know, where their bread's buttered. They're like, we got to get this guy. I love the fact that he's a little bit of an older player. He's got 2 weeks to rest up. And just to remind people what him and Stafford did and that run when they won the Super Bowl a few years ago, he had 4 games. His averages in those 4 games were 10.5 targets, 8.25 receptions, 119 yards per game, and 1.5 touchdowns. And again, I have to remind people, the Super Bowl, I don't think it's discussed enough. The drive that him and Kupp had to win the Super Bowl when everybody knew. The only thing the Rams could do at that point with OBJ out was go to Cooper Kupp, who was double and triple covered, and they went right down the field. It's one of the best drives ever by a wide receiver and a QB. I truly believe that in the situation. And you've talked about it a little bit last night. Kupp destroys zone. Lions run a ton of zone. And I feel like he's going to have a monster game. And I think at 7,500, he is a discount compared to, because if you look, all those other guys, even St. Brown.
Right, we're paying 1,500 more for CD. Yeah,
exactly. Sure. And so that is why I have him, which is, the big difference.
And to your point, too, about, not being overly worried about Puka, it's like you said, like up until that second half of the Super Bowl, all those games are with OBJ out there.
Yep.
And that was an OBJ that was, OBJ was arguably on pace in that Super Bowl to be the MVP. This is not like the OBJ that we've seen this year where it's like occasional flash, but not really the same guy. That was still a really good version of him. And, Cooper Kupp's catching a touchdown in every single game of that playoffs.
Yep. So, and again, won 3 of his last 4. Stafford, by the way, at least 31 pass attempts his last 7 games. That's even with the whole crew together. So I know that with Kyron Williams. And the other thing is the Lions' run D is good. I do want to say, because I'll go ahead and go over this guy, and then I want to get your next player. I agree with you with the Cowboys. Part of the reason that I did not go with Lamb is also, Brandon Cooks is one of my favorite plays this year. And man, we were talking about home road splits. It is outrageous. So first of all, again, the Cowboys score 38.5 points since week 6, they had 6 home games, 6 away games, 38.5 points at home, 24 points per game on the road. Cook, in those 6 home games, touchdown in 5 of 6. He scored at least 14.2 points in 5 of his last 6 home games. And the splits, again, are just ridiculous. 4 targets on the road, a full target more at home, 3 receptions on the road, 4.5 at home. But the mind-boggling number is 24.6 yards receiving in those 6 road games, 72.6 yards per game at home. And then again, the DK points, which that's what we're doing here. Yeah. 8.9 points per game on DK on the road in those 6 games, 17.65 at home. And obviously, I don't think Green Bay can stop CeeDee Lamb. They're not going to, but it would make sense that is the thought process, right? Like, let's try to slow down CeeDee Lamb. And I love that Brandon Cooks is that second option in this passing game. And he's got a pedigree. This is a guy that's had a lot of big moments for the Patriots, for the Rams, for all these different teams in the playoffs. I love him at 4,900. Phil, he's a real value. And he basically, that's my 3 receivers for this game is Kupp, St. Brown, and Cook. So who is your third receiver to go along with St. Brown and Lamb? Obviously, it's got to be a little cheap because of what you spent there.
Yeah, right. It's, again, to your Cooper Kupp play, it's not that I don't like it. It's just I can see that game potentially going differently. And then obviously once I committed to my receivers there was not room for a guy who makes $7,000.
Demarcus Robinson, like there's a lot of other options. Kyron Williams is a great, like to me, it's a gut call. And you know what I mean? Like the one thing that I have been doing lately, and I appreciate Dave Eddy.
It's working.
From Fantasy Six, but well, I mean it is, but like it's just more about like you just gotta trust your gut, right? Like there's data on all of these guys, and I just have a feeling that Kupp's gonna remind people like, hey, I'm awesome. This like alpha wide receiver this week. And I know Stafford really wants to ball out. Not that, that makes a huge difference, but I'm just saying, I know they're buddies and Kupp's going to do everything.
This game, especially. Yeah,
exactly. It means a lot to him. So who is your third wide receiver for your DK lineup?
No, I mean, you just mentioned him. It's Demarcus Robinson because, I did need to go really cheap because of how expensive my other 2 receivers were. And also, once you go under 4,000,
3,600 by the way.
3,600. I don't think there's a guy with probably not with a higher floor because otherwise, who are you looking at? A tight end at under 4,000 to potentially have that?
I think there's some interesting plays in the Tampa Bay Philly game in this price range.
That's true.
And I think Josh Reynolds is an intriguing guy. But I agree with you. The floor part, for sure.
Robinson, again, rested last week. Like most of the Rams, previous 5 games, he's breaking 10 points breaking 13 points in every single game on DK. 4 touchdowns in those games. Last 2 games, especially 6 receptions in both games, 16 total targets. In that 5-game stretch, he's had 2 games where he's seen 10 targets.
Oh, by the way, please give the Lions stat about the number 3 receivers. This is a great stat.
The Lions against number 3 receivers, not the worst in the league, but not remotely good. 22nd in yardage to number 3 receivers, according to FTN Fantasy. All the old Football Outsider stuff is now at FTN now. So DVOA, 22nd against number 3 wide receivers. And also, the coverage in this game is, for both teams, is just not something that...
It's not good.
I have no fear for either of these ones. So... yeah, again, I just think this game is a shootout. I think both teams are going to be putting up points. And I've got a guy who I know is super involved in one of these offenses. Because, again, I want to target the 2 games. And I want those 4 teams. And I like a lot of the Green Bay plays, but all those guys are like $1,000 more. So, to me, he becomes the best value because he's the value play among these 4 teams.
Is like 2,000 more, which is really Reed. Yeah. Like the rest of them have had a lot of good games, but it's been hit or miss. Reed, the one steady guy, he's $2,000 more.
Yeah. So to me, as soon as I decided, you know what, I want CD, I want Amon-Ra, that's a ton of money. there was no question for me. Demarcus Robinson was just automatically in there. And I'll throw this out. So overall coverage grade on the season per PFF, the Lions finished 29th. The Rams finished 31st. So again, this is a game you want to target. You want guys who are catching passes in this game as much as any game. Because again, Green Bay, Dallas, love that one too. Green Bay, the hard part is guessing which guy's the right guy, and they are facing a good defense. Where Dallas, I think, the Cooks play, there's some really good value potential there, especially because of those home run splits. And then Lamb's automatic. But yeah, if you're trying to get a little more creative, I think Lions-Rams is where you can try to find, the number 2 receiver on the Lions, the number 3 receiver on the Rams. I think that's where you can really get something.
To your point, I just want to go over this real quick because just to hammer this home. Some bad things for the Lions versus Rams. QBs. The Lions are dead last in the QBR to quarterbacks throwing to wide receivers versus them. Dead last. The Rams are 7th in yard per play on offense. The Lions are 23rd in yards allowed per play. The Rams are 4th in red zone scoring. The Lions are 29th in points allowed in the red zone. The Rams are 8th in first downs gained. The Lions are 22nd in first down allowed. And the Rams are 10th in passing yards. And the Rams are 27th in passing yards allowed. We cannot stress enough. It is an extreme mismatch. And then on top of that, the Lions are a very good run defense consistently. No matter almost who they've played, they have shut down the run. Or maybe it's not they've shut down the run. It's just teams have figured out, look,
it's just so easy.
It's so much easier. So I'm going to go ahead and do 2 plays here because this was together. Flacco and Njoku. I wanted to do Stafford, but once I decided not to go with what you did, because I do have lineups with Stafford, Robinson, and Kupp. Like I actually have several of them. I decided I wanted to go Flacco and Njoku. A little bit of fear that Joe Flacco could turn into a pumpkin. I know we're all having this love fest, and rightfully so. He's played incredible. Like he deserves all the credit in the world, but I am a little worried that it is Joe Flacco, and everybody's just like chalking it up for what it is. But the thing for me is volume, right? He is chucking it. 40-plus pass attempts is his average. It's like 40.5 per game. Thrown over 42 pass attempts and 4 or 5. He's hit the 300-yard number, which you mentioned. 4 or 5, 11 passing touchdowns in just his last 3 games. And then Njoku, I feel like, is the best play, period. Like if we're ranking, who is the best play you can have, it's Njoku, who is basically a number 1 wide receiver, and you're getting him at 5,600 against the defense that, oh, by the way, allows over 9 targets to tight ends, and tight ends catch 6.5 passes versus Njoku. Since they made the move and you have Flacco playing, I mean, it's remarkable the consistency.
It's insane.
28 receptions in those 4 games, at least 6 in each one of them. 39 targets, at least 8 targets in every single game. Almost 100 yards per, 93. Scored a touchdown in every single game. And what I love is the only game that I say he didn't go off because he didn't score 20-plus points was this game versus the Texans, and he scored 16.1 points. And you go, Keith, why does that make you feel good? Because Amari Cooper's not going to have 280 receiving yards again. He's just not. Like, that's not going to happen again. And that means more of this stuff is going to go to Njoku, who, by the way, still got 8 targets. He still caught 6 passes. He had a touchdown. And again, 16 points. That stack to me is just too good to pass up. And that's why I put Flacco and Njoku in a dome, which is important. Basically, so now you're kind of seeing that lineup, right? We got Kupp, St. Brown, Brandon Cooks, and then I have my QB and tight end at Njoku and Joe Flacco.
Yeah, and I mean, no surprise, 100% with you on David Njoku. We agree, right, that we actually think just straight up, as crazy as it sounds, it might bite us in the ass. He's our number 1 play at tight end regardless of price, right?
Oh,
like even over Kelsey.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think he's the number one play when you're accounting for his price in this slate because it's been so consistent and it's not a tiny sample size anymore. It's 4 games. And you, I think, pointed this out last night. He was trending in that direction even before Flacco became the quarterback. And it was just such an upgrade for him that it's just been kind of like this perfect storm. But I would love this play no matter what. And like I said, the Texans is a team. If you listen to our show here, if you listen to our show on Fantasy Six Pack, we have picked tight ends versus the Texans all season to a lot of success. K-Dot,
we're great.
I'll say this over and over again. He had not scored 10 points or more, and he still didn't. But in one game, he scored 24 points versus this defense. Tight ends can feast versus the Texans. And again, I love the fact that Njoku did not go off. Like, I think the fact that he only scored 16 points may actually keep people to go, well, maybe it's not a slam dunk. Yes, it is. Because again, Amari Cooper had like 250 yards receiving. That will not happen again.
Yeah, I did not in this game anyway.
Right.
So love that play. I guess I'll go ahead and do my combo, which is
so is he
Brock
in your
Wright.
lineup or no?
Njoku, he's my flex. I mean, it doesn't matter.
I was just curious
because of Brock Wright.
Yeah.
Well, it's easier when you fill out your lineup to do the tight end at 3,000 because then you don't have to scroll through a million things to get to the guy.
Yeah.
So technically Njoku is my flex. Brock Wright is my tight end, which again, it comes down to I spent a lot of money at those 2 wide receiver spots, and there's a couple others where I was spending money. So I needed someone super cheap.
Real quick, if they end up playing Laporta, do you pivot from this?
Oof. That's a good question. I haven't thought a lot about it because I just can't imagine Laporta is going to play.
I don't either. Like, I was shocked that they practiced him today. I just think it would be extremely irresponsible of a really good organization, in the last year or two to put you hit a freaking home run with this kid. And everything I've read is this kind of injury, you absolutely can tear your knee. Like, you can absolutely, it makes it much more likely you can tear your ACL, MCL, PCL, and why risk it?
Yeah, it does not seem worth it to me. You know what? If that happens, I might just pivot to K-Dot because, small spoiler, I have $100 left at the end when I finish my lineup. K-Dot is $100 more.
I like
and again, because we're dealing with a limited Mayfield, could be less throwing the ball downfield.
And a really bad defense versus tight ends. Really
again, like you correctly pointed out, the worst defense that is in the playoffs, and one that has not been good at all against tight ends. So that might be where I just decide to pivot, so I don't have to mess with anything else.
Can I do my Brock Wright spill real quickly? Because I know some people are probably going,
no, you're the one who turned me on to Brock Wright, so please go for it.
So this is all about the fact that, we know what Laporta is, right? Like, he's a freak. He is. He almost 900 yards receiving.
He's fantastic.
It's like 90 receptions, 10 touchdowns. But when I looked into it, it really was not that surprising. In this Detroit offense with Jared Goff, he had all the touchdowns he did because he has 10, Wright has 1. So I'm like, let me go back and look last year. They had 13 touchdowns to tight ends last year. TJ Hawkinson was on this team for 4 weeks, and they traded him. So that means there was 9 touchdowns by Brock Wright, James Mitchell, and a guy I've never heard of named Shane Zylstra. Wright had a multi-touchdown game. Zylstra had a multi-touchdown game. The big thing is, there's 2 things. The Rams are awful versus tight ends. They're another team that we picked on all year. And when you look at it just by the numbers, Goff has thrown 59 passing touchdowns the last 2 seasons. 24 of them have gone to tight ends. That's 40%. That is absurd. And for a guy that's 3K, where if we get 9 points, that's a home run. He'll have the fire symbol next to him. Like, that's the way DK does it too. Like, if he has 3 times, he'll have that fire symbol. And I just think that they're going to go to him because we know, again, Raymond's out, Laporta's out. The Rams are also a team it's been difficult to run on. I think I love the right play. Love the right play. Like, I hate to say this for selfish reasons, but I want Laporta not to play just so I can put Wright in a bunch of freaking lineups and be like, I feel really good about this. And no, a lot of people are not going to play him.
Right, because who's heard of Brock Wright?
Yeah.
Like, literally not me until you were like, hey, Brock Wright. And I was like, oh, yeah, Laporta's out.
And he's smoking the
makes a lot of
pipe
sense.
again is what you're thinking at first.
Yeah, dude, I'm trying to ride your wave. I'm trying to, get some tailwinds here.
And we know how I am with these tight ends anyway, so.
Exactly. But then, obviously, I think it makes a lot of sense if you're, writing down my lineup that I have the tight end for the Lions. I have the top wide receiver for the Lions. I'm going to go with the quarterback for the Detroit Lions, which is Jared Goff at 6,200.
This is the one thing that I'm worried. You're talking me more and more into it, and I think maybe I'm whiffing on this right now because if we think they're down, we were talking about Jordan Love for the same situation. Why would you not like Goff, who is also so much better at home? Like, he's been so good at home.
Right, and just to break it down a little bit about how much better at home he has been. His touchdown to interceptions, again, played one less game at home than on the road. 19 touchdowns to 6 picks at home. So he's throwing over 2 touchdowns per game at home, under an interception. On the road, also the 6 interceptions, so totally fine there. 11 touchdowns. So averaging barely over 1 touchdown per game. Games of over 20-plus points on DK. At home, 5. On the road, 2. Again, played 1 fewer home game. Games under 15 points, 1 at home. So over 25 times, under 15 once. So feeling great about that. On the road, it's 2 over 20, 6 under 15. So the majority of games he played on the road, he was under 15 points. Majority he played at home, over 20. So the numbers are massive.
I'm laughing, Joe, because I just looked in my notes. I have his splits from last year from our episode, week 17. Last year,
the same stuff.
20 touchdowns, 2.5 per game at home, 6 on the road, 0.85. His points per game at home on DK, 23.08. On the road, 13.3. Yards per game, 280 yards at home, 240 on the road. Multiple touchdowns in 7 of 8 home games. He had multiple touchdowns in 1 of 7 road games. 20-plus points, 5 of 8 home games. 20-plus points 1 time in his 7 road games. And only game with 15 points or more on the road was that game that he scored 20 points. Man, like, this guy, this is not just this year. This is just golf is so
right. That's what he
indoor, is. Yeah.
Which is, why Lions fans are so upset that potentially next round we'd be on the road in Dallas.
Yeah, especially because they come out the
yeah. Well, yeah, and then an extra 20 yards per game through the air at home, where he averages 280. So we're within 20 yards of, on average, of that 300 that we want. And again, against the team that was 31st in coverage grade, and in a game where we think there's a reasonable chance they'll be losing, or at least it'll be back and forth. So there's even more reason for the Lions to pass than they would have had in a lot of those home games where, they're winning the game the whole time. So, yeah, like, again, if Stafford's the same price, maybe I'm going Stafford. But, the fact that I can save that $300 in a game where I think both teams are going to score a bunch of points, I'm going to do it.
And I love just the fact that you're getting, again, if Laporta's out, which I don't think he's going to play, you're getting his unquestioned number 1 receiver. Mm-hmm. And I think that Brock Wright is a great freaking play at $3K to where you're stacking a QB that's cheaper than Stafford, that's cheaper than basically everybody. Other than, I think he's 100 more than Flacco, right? Isn't he 6,200? I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're getting him with 2 good options with great matchups. Because, again, I think the Rams are like 29 or 30th on DK versus tight ends. The running back was the toughest spot, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, 100%. So we've already got your flex too, right? Because you went right into go. So real quick,
yes, we have everything except my running backs and defense.
So just like you, I'm kind of in a situation where it's like, okay, we ain't got a lot of money because we got Kupp, St. Brown, Brandon Cooks, Flacco, Njoku. I'm going with Quez Watkins. This is just a dart. I mean, to be honest, like if I'm being 100%,
with the AJ Brown stuff, it's a better dart than even it was the other day.
The other thing I just love about it is that he seems in the he's only played 2 games this year because he's been injured a lot. he does seem to be the slot receiver, even because I know Julio's obviously a concern. The reason that's the big deal is Tampa Bay is one of the worst defenses in the league versus number 3 receivers, and they're one of the worst defenses in the league versus receivers in the slot. Watkins lines up in the slot like 71% of the time when he plays, and Hurts is another guy that's banged up. That's, I think, got a big reason why Dallas Goedert has had 20 targets in his last 3 games is he can't air it out to Devontae and A.J. Brown like they probably want to. And so I had to go. It was either Watkins or Palmer. And I kind of think Tampa Bay is going to try. Like, I think Tampa Bay is going to win and they're going to be up. And that means that Philly's going to be throwing. And that means Watkins has a better chance. There is a very good chance, though. Again, if Laporte is out, I'll go ahead and tell you I am pivoting immediately to the exact same thing you did. And I'm going to take him out and put Brock Wright in because that's going to allow me to upgrade at my defense, which I really want to do. Let's start with the running backs.
Let's do it.
Do you have Najee Harris?
I do not have Najee Harris.
Okay. So my back was Najee Harris, 5,400. The weather, I was on this before. The weather was just shit. And it's just, 19 plus carries in 3 straight games to me is significant. It's the most carries he's had this season in 3 straight games that Jaylen Warren's been playing in. And by the way, he's been his most effective that he's been all season. Harris is the more physical back, and this weather seems to be, that way. And again, this is where you kind of got to try to guess what games. I think Pittsburgh is going to make a game with Buffalo. I love them getting 10 points. And because of that, I think Najee Harris is going to be a big part of it. And so at 5,400, he was pretty much he was the back I put in first. And then I kind of figured it out with the other one. Who was your first back that you're like, I got to have in this lineup?
My first guy was Pacheco.
Which I'll go ahead and tell you, he is my other back.
Yeah, because again, the weather in these 2 games, I think, just orients both teams towards the run. Obviously, especially in that Buffalo Steelers game. If Josh Allen wasn't a touchdown vulture, then James Cook's probably the guy I'm putting in. And then I'm figuring out a way to save some more money because James Cook was $200 more. But, Pacheco, last game he played against Cincinnati before taking a week off, 18 carries, 130 yards. And he had 7 receptions for 35.
Yeah, that was like the best he looked all year.
And prior to getting hurt, because, he just came back in week 16, the 2 games prior, Raiders, who actually defensively have played quite well down the stretch.
Yeah.
And then Green Bay, where, again, I'm a little bit worried that I don't have Tony Pollard in one of these lineups. But both of those games, he breaks 24 points, 25-9, 24-3. So 3 of the last 4 games he has suited up for, he has scored 24 points. So, and like you said, I think we just saw the best game maybe he's ever played.
He's the most important thing, too, for me, for the Kansas City Chiefs to make a run at the Super Bowl, which I am sleeping on. And I'll admit now that, that's probably dumb of me because, let's be honest, they win a home game. They beat Buffalo, and you're telling me you don't like Kansas City's chance, whether it's at Baltimore or wherever, and an AFC title game.
If it's not at Baltimore, then I love their chance. So, and we've seen it before. Obviously, the Ravens were kind of the favorites a couple years ago. Lamar Jackson's the MVP. They lose to the Titans, and who was hosting the conference championship? It was Kansas City.
Remember who called that, Joe?
I do remember who called that. So. Again, that's why we're paying attention to what you say.
But Pacheco, to the point, right? He's been a workhorse too. I think he's had 20 plus carries in a bunch of games. I love that McKinnon's out, right? Because McKinnon has always been that guy in the playoffs.
7 receptions in the last game that he played.
That's what I was going to say. That really hinders him because of his upside on DK, because of the passing game. I'm with you. I ended up coming around to where he's the other back. I actually think, I had Harris as the back that was my number 1 back when we ranked him last night. I think you taught me last night, and the more I thought into it, I think Pacheco's that guy, especially knowing the weather.
Yeah, and then, like you said, a guy who already, prior to McKinnon, seeing the ball a lot, 8th in opportunity share among running backs, according to a player profiler. 11th in breakaway run rate. So that's 5.4%, which isn't super high, but that means 1 out of every 20 runs he's busted in one. And in a game like this, where we think it's probably going to be a bit of a struggle because of the weather.
Well, the Chiefs' offense too has just been.
Well, yeah, that's true. I think a night game in Kansas City where outside of probably, I would say I relatively trust Rashid Rice, and then every other wide receiver, so not counting Kelsey, don't trust at all. I mean, Kadarius Toney, I'm like expecting him to somehow give the ball to the other team.
Friggin' Juju Watson, like boy,
so.
Yikes.
Considering all that, kind of banking on if I'm someone who thinks Kansas City will win, and I am.
Yeah, for sure.
A Pacheco huge run seems like a really reasonable thing to me. And Miami's run defense this season, generally pretty good. But then, PFF, thorough as they are, they grade tackling 22nd in the league in tackling grade. Miami.
Pacheco runs hard, right? Like he's somebody that tackles.
And then you give him a crease, and he can be gone. So, yeah, Pacheco was my top guy, and I'll just go ahead and do my next one because I wanted it to be Najee Harris because I think you talked me into it. I think there's a lot of good arguments there. I could afford it, so I went Jalen Warren.
Yeah,
a couple things to that. I mean, one in favor of both of them. I just brought up the tackling grade. Well, you never guess who's worse. It's the Buffalo Bills, who are 26th in tackling grade. The only playoff team that has a worse tackling grade this season was the Houston Texans at 28th. So not good there. So already I'm like, all right, sweet. I've got a Buffalo team that doesn't tackle super well. Feeling good about that.
Yep.
And then considering I think there's a real chance that you're right, that this is just a close game because that's kind of what the Steelers have done. And the Bills,
if it's not, this is an advantage to you because he's the
if it's not, and Buffalo is just dominating this game, which wouldn't shock me either because they are a way better team than the Steelers. I mean, the Bills are a team I've been telling people all year, like back when they were like 5-5 or whatever. I was like, don't sleep on the Bills. Like, all the underlying stats are like this is a top 5 team the entire season, regardless of the record.
For them. Bad draw that this game is this weather because I really feel like if this was just
they're just running them,
they would be like, oh my god, I think they'd score 40 on Pittsburgh without T.J. Watt. But it's not the best situation for this team,
right? And if they do end up kind of building up a lead, who's had 4 receptions in 5 straight games? It's Jalen Warren. And again, in a bad weather game, like maybe Josh Allen can
ability to bust a run at any point.
Yeah, maybe Josh Allen can cut through those wins. I don't like Mason Rudolph to cut through those wins.
No, I don't either. Was it?
And then the other thing too,
Duck Rudolph or something. I'm serious.
I think no. Duck was Hodges, the guy, Devlin Hodges. Which, again, Mike Tomlin. I've never been a full-on Tomlin, like top 5 coach guy, but the fact that he finished with a non-losing record where he had to start Duck Hodges for 6 games, Jesus, that's impressive. But again, bad tackling for the Bills. Who's got the highest juke rate in the NFL according to Player Profiler? It's Jalen Warren. Wow, 31.9%. So basically, 1 out of every 3 times that he carries the ball, he is breaking a tackle. He is 3rd in breakaway run rate at 8%. So again, a snow game where it's hard for the defense to cut, Jalen Warren, great option. Now, obviously, Najee Harris is the guy who gets more carries usually. So if you have the money, I would lean Najee, but this is not a huge drop off to me.
No,
I like Jalen Warren a lot.
A lot of sense. So full discretion, my defense hamstrung because. That's why I do like if Laporta's out, that will be a shift to right because then I can get up to Kansas City, which is the defense I want, 2,900. But I don't hate Pittsburgh at 2,600 because of the weather. And Josh Allen is a turnover freaking machine. Like if he throws it, Josh Allen's going to throw a pick. Maybe it's a pick 6. So I just kind of got stuck with Pittsburgh. So just real quickly to go through my lineup, it's Flacco, Najee Harris, Isaiah Pacheco, Cooper Kupp, Quez Watkins, David Njoku, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Pittsburgh defense. And again, though, if Laporta is officially ruled out, taking out Watkins, putting Brock Wright into that flex, and that will give me the money which I desperately need to get up to Kansas City because Kansas City, it's really impressive. I couldn't believe they haven't given up 30 points all season.
No, that defense is good.
Really good. And again, Tua 0-10 and games under 40. Like, I joked, or I didn't joke, but I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Tyreek makes a big play, and that's the difference in a close game. But I think Miami's going to have a really hard time moving the ball against his defense.
No, I mean, I think you're right about that. Where, again, these teams already played. And
in Germany.
I think it was reasonable weather as far as I remember. I only caught the end of it. I was in Vegas and was not up early that morning.
Dome, right? That they play, I think, in Frankfurt or whatever. But anyway.
Yeah, like I don't remember the weather. It was obviously whatever it was, dome. Otherwise, it was better than it will be this weekend. So I like that play a lot. But I like this play a little more, and I had the money, so it's the Houston Texans for me at 3,000.
You're really getting me to come around on this. I like the case you're about.
Because again, Joe Flacco. Listen, I'm enjoying the Joe Flacco renaissance. Like, again, guys throwing 300-yard games left and right, which is not something he'd ever done before in his entire career. But he's also throwing an interception in every single game he has played this year. He has 9 turnovers in 5 games. So, throw in anyone else fumbling, and it's like, all right, 2 turnovers. Good chance that happens.
Will Anderson is out. Do you swap that down to Kansas City? Because he's questionable.
Ooh. That's a good question. I might. That might be enough. But the other thing I like is I was searching for this because I've seen it tweeted out by some of the analytics guys that I follow. Because I always like to see this because when it comes time to hire offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators become coaches, I like having this information, and it's helpful for this as well, is PFF charts perfectly covered plays, right?
Yeah.
Texans 6th highest defensively in perfectly covered plays.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's surprising with their coach, right?
No, yeah, and obviously, 3 of the teams that are ahead of them are the Browns, the Bills, and the Ravens. So, it helps to cover well.
That surprises me a little bit.
So, yeah, well-coached defense is helpful. So, yeah, they're not an elite defense, but they're not a defense that's just fucking up. And if you're not a defense that's fucking up, and you have Joe Flacco who's averaging almost 2 turnovers a game, you're probably going to get the 2 turnovers. So I like the Texans a little bit more. To your point, though, if your best outside pass rusher is out, then maybe I like the Kansas City one where, again, my guy Spags is one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. And this is for all the stuff that we've said about the wide receivers and they're holding this team back, this is the best defense that they've had in the Reed Mahomes era. Like, this is
ironically probably the best all-around team. Like, the kicker doesn't ever miss. The special teams,
they're good at everything except catching the ball. So.
Could you imagine if you took Green Bay's young receiving core, because Kansas City and Green Bay both have young receiving cores, and you just swapped them? Like, what kind of year would Mahomes have right now? It'd be ridiculous, right?
I mean, to be fair, I think Rashee Rice is right up there with any of those guys, or better even.
Well, I get that, but I'm saying they also have, like, the
Packers. There's no second guy.
Bringing, another dude every week, it feels like.
Because all you need is one other guy who's reasonable, and you've got Kelsey, you got Rashee Rice, and you feel great. But the fact is, none of those guys has been. So, yeah. But, yeah, I think those are the defenses. So, yeah, I guess I'll run through my lineup one more time.
Please. Yep.
So we've got Goff for 6,200, Pacheco for 64, Warren for 51, Demarcus Robinson for 36, Lamb for 9,000, Amon-Ra for 8,000, Brock Wright for 3, Njoku for 56, Texans for 3,000, and I'll pocket that $100.
Yeah, it's always nice to have a little cash in your pocket. So again, that's each of the lineup. I'll go through mine one more time just in case you were not paying attention. Joe Flacco, Najee Harris, Flacco 6,100, Harris 54, Pacheco 6,400, Kupp 7,500, Brandon Cooks 4,900, my boy Amon-Ra, the Sun God 8K. Right now I have Watkins for Philadelphia. He's 3,500, but again, Laporta's out. I'm swapping that flex in. I will put Brock Wright in there. And right now I have Njoku 5,600 tight end, and then the Steelers D 2,600. What I would do with that extra money would just immediately upgrade from the Steelers to either the Chiefs. So you might talk me into the Texans, especially if Anderson plays, because
yeah, I mean, if you have it, obviously, if you have it, because
I do
feel
like
fine about Kansas
what
City.
you're saying, and not to mention I just keep saying the Cleveland game to me feels like the game. There's always that one game in the first round of the playoffs where everybody thinks it's going one way, and then it goes the other. And not only do I think there's a chance that could happen, it'd be one of those going, it was C.J. Stroud, the best QB we've seen in forever, versus a 40-year-old Joe Flacco. And everybody's like, oh, yeah, Brown said he's going to dominate. So it would not shock me. But any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I mean, official plays of the pod. Pacheco, Amon-Ra, and, well, I guess Njoku. And you didn't have Brock, right? Did you?
Well, I mean, like I said, I would, if I know Laporta's out, he will be in. Like I have right now, Watkins in.
Right. Okay. So if Laporta is out, we have 4 official plays, and those are them.
And I might even see if our good friend and very talented man Zach Berger could do a little graphic for us. If so, maybe
I love the graphics.
We'll tweak that out, see which one people like more. You better vote for me. But Joe, I appreciate you. This is a lot of fun. We always love to be here at Fantasy and Frames. And again, we're not going anywhere. We will be here for the divisional round. We'll be here for the conference championship, and we'll be here for the Super Bowl. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, especially Joe. I know Joe is not as, loud and boisterous on Twitter as I am, tweeting all the time and stuff. But Joe is just one of the best follows in the world, because he'll tell you about good movies, TV shows. And the best part about it, if you follow Joe, is you can message him just like you can message me.
Yeah.
And we both will respond. Like, unless something's going on, I am happy to interact with people. I love this stuff. I know Joe does as well. And seriously, hit us up. We appreciate anybody who takes the time to listen to our stuff. And hopefully we continue to help you win some money. But be sure to check out all the amazing work at Fantasy and Frames. They are doing a little bit of a reboot with the website and the Outlook. But that doesn't mean all the social media stuff is not still kicking. You got TikTok, YouTube, all those. Make sure you're following all of them. And then something that I am very proud of, that I did not have anything to do with it this year, I did 2 years ago. They do some of the best college prospect evaluations, articles, videos that you're going to find anywhere. And that stuff's going to be coming really soon. So be sure to pay attention to that. We appreciate all of you. And again, I got to hit it on the way out because it's a freaking banger. Let's hit that song, and good luck, everybody. I hope you win a lot of money. Have a great Martin Luther King Jr. holiday weekend. We'll see you soon.